Hello, everyone. Patty here, your coach and job strategist. Today, a bucket list comes true. Dr. John Demartini is a researcher, writer, and teacher. He is a full-time traveler, though not right now. And I have had the pleasure of being part of his breakthrough experience, which Dr. Demartini, that's why we're here, right? After we had your first online class with the breakthrough experience, and it was such a nice group. I woke up the next morning with the idea of redesigning work in a new paradigm, because we are now in a new paradigm, whether people know it or not. There might be a little bit of going back to the old ways, but it will continue to be a drastic shift for people. And so I wanted to get your idea on how we can educate the individuals out there watching as to how to redefine and redesign. So thank you so much for being here with me.
No, thank you. Well, whether we liked it or not, we have had a very interesting period. And I think it's still going to be a little bit longer, as we probably anticipate. It's forced myself to expedite the introduction to the online world and technology, even though I was involved in it, doing podcasts and webinars and online programs. It's catalyzed it even further, which is making it more efficient and effective for all of us in our field to reach more people, more efficient ways, in a way that is in the luxury of people's own homes even. And so that I'm very grateful for the technological kick in the butt that I've had in this experience. So yeah, I think everybody, when you find out that Amazon has hired 100,000 people because online is so busy, and you see that people are going and getting food online and getting items online, and the reality is that we're in that era now. And I think this situation that's gone on with Saint Corona has catalyzed some of that to be sped up. And it's also solved some of the issues that we faced on global warming and pollution and a bunch of other things. I mean, we're having Saint Corona do amazing things on the planet. There is going to be some lives taken, but there's definitely going to be new lives originating. I think the baby boom is happening right now, and because people are at home, and there's a lot of lovemaking going on.
Right.
And so I think that we just have to adapt. Wisdom is continually being resilient and adaptable to a changing environment. And stress is inability to adapt. So this is forcing us to basically be wise in our resilient approach to teaching and contribution and serving people today, which is great.
Right. And, wisdom to me, Dr. Demartini, is releasing the emotional charge, right? So we have so many past experiences that are beneath the surface that we're unknown about. And that's part of the redefining, right? I mean, right now is really the time to go within. What else are you going to do other than make babies? Right?
Well, I spend my time researching, writing right now, and doing a lot of interviews. And anything that we can't say thank you for is our baggage. Anything that we've judged, that we've been too proud or too humble to admit what we see in others inside ourselves, is stored in our subconscious mind to reverberate as noise in the brain, to remind us to go back and love the things we haven't loved, to be grateful for the things we haven't been grateful for. And anything we can't say thank you for is baggage, but anything we can say thank you for becomes fuel. So this is a great introspective, reflective time opportunity for upgrading our awareness and being fully conscious instead of half conscious with our judgments. So this is actually a step forward for us as a collective if we use it wisely. If we sit and wallow in the problem instead of honoring the transformational solution that emerges and is waiting for us to see, we'll slow down the opportunity or possibly even miss out on the opportunity of the great transformation that it's bringing. So I'm a firm believer that this is a time for introspection and reflection, as well as innovation, creativity, and contribution.
Hmm. And that is part of the redefining, right? So with this, with the thousands and thousands of students that you have, how many breakthrough experiences have you completed so far?
Well, this weekend coming up will be the 1094th. So
Wow.
I've taught that program 1094 times. Only one so far online. This will be the second one online.
I know, I'm so happy that I was part of that.
Yeah, you were on the first one. And but yeah, I've done this in 65 countries. But now with students around the world, we've had students from almost every country been a breakthrough. But I've done it live in 65 countries. Most recent one, the most recent one was a new country was Istanbul, Turkey. We had 235 people attending. And so, yeah, I've been doing it since late 80s. And I've been very inspired by it. I call it within a tiny seed lies a mighty oak, and it's an idea whose time has come.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to assist people in breaking through whatever they perceive in the way and turn it into something they see as on the way. Mm-hmm. So they realize that whatever is in their heart that they would love to create in the world, that they can. There's no reason why they can't do that. And there's no reason why they can't empower all areas of their life. Because any area of our life we don't empower, we get overpowered by others to catalyze us and stimulate us to empower our lives. So everything is ultimately trying to get us to be the most masterful, most authentic, most inspired contributor on the planet we can be.
So talk about that again, about the overpower, because that's something that everyone that's listening can utilize, right? So I want to hear that again.
Well, if we don't empower ourselves intellectually, we'll be told what to think. If we don't empower ourselves in business, we'll be told what to do. If we don't empower ourselves in finance, we'll be told what we're worth. If we don't empower ourselves in relationship, we'll probably be pushed around and kind of told what to do at home. If we're not empowered socially, we'll be told the propaganda to believe, or the morals or traditions or ethics that we're supposed to live by. It's a collective conformity construct. If we don't empower ourselves physically, we'll be told what drugs to take or what organs to emit. And if we don't empower ourselves spiritually, we'll be probably trapped in an antiquated dogma that's illogical and irrational for today. But if we are empowering those areas and giving ourselves permission to live authentically according to what we value most and what's most meaningful and inspiring and fulfilling to us, and we do it in a way that contributes to great numbers of people, so we can have our vocation be our vacation. We can do what we love and get paid to do it, so we can delegate lower priority things and liberate ourselves from the bondage of things that are uninspiring and go live an inspiring life. We can empower all those. There's absolutely no reason why we can't. I set out when I was in my teens to empower all areas of life. And I divided life into spiritual, mental, career, financial, family, social, and physical areas. And I wanted to contribute original ideas that served humanity on the planet and document some models and principles that will stand the test of time. And that has been my dream to do that since I was a teenager. I want to have an international business, a global business. And I want to have financial independence. And I want to have a global family dynamic where I live around the world. As you know, I live on a ship called the world that travels around the world. I want to have a global social influence, meet amazing people, and get to hang out with movers and shakers on the planet. I want to have a physical, vital body. I'm going on 66, and I'm still cranking and got more energy than most people. And that's a blessing. And also to be inspired by a spiritual contribution without necessarily being trapped in any constraining religious box, but to be able to contribute something that anybody in any faith or any construct or existential belief could be utilizing. And I set out to do that, and believe it or not, those are all real today. Every one of those are come true, and they're all doable. And I believe that every human being has the capacity to create the life that they really, really would love to create. And there's principles and methods to do it. And I've done everything I can to gather and put those together and try to share those as much as I can as I travel. Because I felt that the greatest teacher, as Einstein said, is exemplification. Exemplify an inspired life, and there'll be other people that will follow suit. And if I help other people get what they want to get in life, as Zig Ziglar taught me when I was 20, I get what I want in life. That's the beauty of it all.
Dr. Demartini, let's talk about time a little bit, since you mentioned Einstein, right? Time is a fascinating thing to me because I had a bad fall when I was 19. And during that fall, it made me realize the brain functions in an amazing way, right? Because that fall seemed like it lasted a lifetime. And then of course, you know, the beauty was blacking out when I hit to protect myself. But, you know, I've always wanted to get back to that place where I am falling again, because what happened during that time was so amazing as far as the surroundings around me, right? Like I was an absolute sponge. Time just slowed down and my perception of time changed, and I became very respectful of time after that. Um,
You
um,
use your time more effectively after that?
right. You know,
Yeah.
and we can, right? We can speed it up. We can slow it down. We can, we have the ability to maneuver around it.
Exactly.
Right. Great.
Well,
And I'm also curious, Dr. Demartini, as to from when you created those dreams, as to when you really saw them start to actualize, like how much time that took.
okay, good. I'll try to put all those things in there. St. Augustine, if anybody who's listening would like to explore time, St. Augustine, the theologian, philosopher, did a fantastic time on what is time and what is the present and what is the past, and what is the future. So if you can go and probe on the internet on St. Augustine's dissertation on time, it's a worthy pursuit.
Great.
Einstein said that when you're kissing a girlfriend, 2 hours zips by like 2 minutes. But when you're waiting for a freight train, 2 minutes takes like 2 hours.
Right.
So pleasure and pain, as Anaxagoras, the Greek philosopher in the 6th century, one of the Pythagorean derivatives, he basically said that pain and pleasure are simply lopsided perceptions, and they distort the fabric of space and time. And it's true. And Einstein demonstrated that in his general theory of relativity and special relativity. And so our perception of time is based on how we're perceiving our environment. If we perceive it as challenging us and it activates the sympathetic nervous system, it seems like it slows down time and it takes forever to get through the situation.
Mm-hmm.
If we see it as it's supporting us and activating our parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest instead of fight or flight,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more supportive, it seems like it accelerates time and shrinks space. So all emotions, supportive or challenging, positive or negative emotions, distort the fabric of space-time. But if you put those two emotions, complementary opposite emotions, and put them together in a moment of presence and a moment of love, you extract out space and time from the mind and enter into a moment of presence where you don't even know time. You don't know space. You're kind of one with the universe, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And in that simplistic present state, where we actually are our authentic self. We're not judging things. We're not too proud to admit what we see in others and looking down on them. We're not too humble to see what we see in others and looking up at them, but we're actually just looking across reflective and realize that everything around us is a reflection of us. We become present. And then we have a timeless mind, ageless body. We don't notice time and we don't age. Aging is a feedback mechanism to our mind to let us know we're not being authentic, we're judging something. It's creating entropy out of an actually negentropic emerging process in our heart that's constantly trying to merge. And it's basically creating a polarity of perceptions instead of an integration. It was Gilbert Lewis, who was a Nobel Prize winner in 1932, who wrote a book called The Atom and the Molecule. And he talked about polarization and non-polarization of chemistry, but he was implying subtly in his writings of the mind. And that maybe that there's a panpsychic underlying field of intelligence that's governing all physics and metaphysics, and it's basically underlying our existence. And that maybe our perceptions of the world, our participatory universal construct, is actually underlying what's going on. And how we perceive the world has an impact on how we act in the world. It was William James who said in 1895 that we have the greatest discovery of his generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their perceptions and attitudes of mind. Mm-hmm. We have command over our perceptions, decisions, and actions. If we have a choice to do that, we can transform anything that ever happens to us. The coronavirus could be considered a demonic situation to some who are challenged, or it could be called Saint Corona, if you look at all the blessings that are emerging.
Mm-hmm.
So if we stop and look at both sides simultaneously, we'll just love what's happening. If not, we'll be distraught or be ecstatic. And either of those are incomplete, because when we're elated, we're conscious of the upsides, unconscious of the downsides, and we're skewing our reality.
Mm-hmm.
We're depressed, we're conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides, and skewing reality. But when we see both sides synchronously, fully consciously, we feel that there's nothing but love, and all else was illusion, and we become present. And that's where we have the greatest potential to do the most inspiring services for the world, and contributions and innovations and genius expressions.
So such delicious stuff. I mean, literally everything that you're saying, I'm a sponge right now. Looking at both sides, there's a blessing in the stressing, right? You got to see it in the way, not on the way. Good, bad, challenge, support, love, fear, right? We live in a world of duality. So is the pursuit to neutralize it and bring it together?
Well,
and
it's
see
not
both
that
sides?
I don't want to give people a misleading idea that you're going to get it all together and you're now going to be integrated and it's all going to be done and you're going to be in this
Right.
enlightened state, because I think that's misleading. In fact, I just had a Chinese woman who has been pursuing this fantasy of staying enlightened and thinking she's going to find a guru that's going to stay enlightened all the time. And I'm an iconoclast and leery of those fantasies. I've met a lot of gurus over the years. They're just human beings. The people give them, the fantasy that they're going to get there and stay there. But you have to learn, as Einstein said, you have to live with holy curiosity. And it's the questions, the polarities that also are needed in the journey. So I always say the second you find the synthesis and synchronicity of these complementary opposites that Heraclitus had basically described in his times, whenever you see both sides synchronously and you have a moment of grace and you see the hidden order and the apparent chaos and you realize that there's nothing but love there at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
you're automatically promoted, you walk through a kind of like a black hole through a little worm tunnel, a wormhole into a new white hole, and emerge a new set of illusions, the next mystery. And the next mystery has the next judgment that you get to grow through, the next holy curiosity, the next question, the next problem that you face. And you wouldn't want to be without that, because that's what growth is. The fulfillment of
Right.
conquering and transforming and transcending the mysteries and the problems and the judgments in life, that's part of the journey. So it's not that you're going to ever be rid of all of them. You're
Right.
going to take on bigger ones, and they're not going to get smaller. I think, the smart individuals are pursuing challenges that inspire them. It was that little Netflix video on Bill Gates.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading a very great article on him and then seeing it again referenced in this Netflix movie, that he's asking the question, what is it that I can do today with the resources that I have to serve the greatest amount of people in the most efficient, effective way, in a way that inspires me? Now, that's a wise question to ask every single day.
Right.
Because no matter what you're in, see, anytime you're comparing your current reality to anything but what's there, you have a delusion and an unrealistic expectation and a fantasy that's going to be depressing, because you're comparing what is actually in front of you to what you think it should have been, or hope it would be, or got to be, or need to be, or what it used to be, or what you hope someday will be. Instead of being present and just being grateful for that, asking, with what I'm in now, in this situation, how can I use these resources with my mind and my creativity to the greatest capacity to serve the greatest amount of people in the most inspiring and efficient way?
Mm-hmm.
If we ask that question on a daily basis and stick to what Gary Keller calls the one thing, the highest priority thing we can do each day, then we are maximizing our human potential on planet Earth. And this is inspiring, and we get rewarded and fulfilled making that difference and solving those problems. It's the problems we solve that make us feel fulfilled in life. It's not avoiding problems, it's solving problems.
Mm-hmm. Now let's jump onto the questions, because here it is. Coaching clients, I say to them over and over again, you're only as good as your questions, right? If you ask, how am I going to pay rent today? And I've noted this before, I get it. I've been there. It's not one of the big questions, right? That is a fear-based question. Right now, what I'm doing right now when I wake up every morning, I say, who can I serve today? And as a matter of fact, I just served my neighbor
Well,
because
I,
she fell and hurt her hip. And I love helping her, and I love helping and taking out her dog, right? I mean, it's basic, but it feels good to her, it feels good to me, and that just raised the vibration. So I know that there's a lot of conversations that go on right now. Live in a higher vibration. You can't have a high vibration without a low vibration.
well, the vibration is based on the speed in which you see both sides of an event.
Mm.
So if you are seeing some challenge and it takes you days, weeks, months, or years to see the terrific inside the terrible, then you have a relative ignorance of one side. And your wisdom is a little low. You're low on reflection. But if you can see that the right there on the spot within the terrible, there's the terrific, and you can see it instantaneously, your frequency is very high. The frequency is based on the speed in which you see things. You can have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process by taking time to see the other side. You can have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process by seeing it, by asking the quality questions. So a coach is designed to ask quality questions to help people see what's unconscious, to make them fully conscious and see both sides as soon as possible, and bring them into equanimity where they're poised and they're present and they're in an executive function and able to find solutions to the so-called problems, which are actually catalyzing their growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a firm believer in that. And I'm a firm believer that the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions you ask. But the greatest questions are the ones that bring equanimity and are congruent with what the intuition is constantly whispering inside our head. For instance, if we're infatuated with somebody, our intuition is trying to point out the downsides. So we don't lose ourselves subordinating to somebody and sacrifice ourselves for that infatuated person. And if we're resentful to somebody, because we're trying to change them relative to us, it's trying to point out the upside and the purpose and meaning of why they're in our life. It's trying to reveal to us what we're unconscious of. Once we realize, if we ask questions that make us fully conscious and bring our minds back into equanimity and see both sides synchronously, we liberate ourselves and we empower ourselves. And then the world on the outside doesn't occupy space and time in our mind and run us down and age us, because that's what aging is. The entropy that occurs from storing in our memory and our fantasy dissociated imagination, these distorted, incomplete awarenesses. So the second we see both sides synchronously, we feel love again and we're grateful. And we see the hidden order and we find meaning, the meaning between these polarities. And we're inspired by what we're capable of doing next and tackling a bigger challenge. And, I said at a church one time, and at first there was a bit of a shock and an oh on their face. I said, if you're poor, it's because you're not caring about humanity. Because if you're caring about humanity, you're finding a way of serving humanity and looking for direct or indirect ways to get a product, service, or idea out efficiently and effectively that serves people. If you do, you're focused on that. You're not focused on your problems. And the people that aren't willing to do that and focus on their problems end up pretty poor. But the people that care enough to serve people and fill those needs and do it with equity and fair exchange that's sustainable, they end up having great rewards economically, and they exemplify and reward themselves, and then they exemplify that for other people to encourage them to do the same to serve. So yes, solving problems is one of the greatest fulfillments a human being can have.
So true. And you solve many of them. And here it is. It is a mystery right now, right, Dr. John? It is a mystery, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a great amount of people in fight or flight right now.
Yes.
What would, and this is a broad question, but what would you say to them? I mean, what counsel would you give?
Yeah, well, I'll make a statement that people can chew on for a second. Like I said, I've been involved in human development or whatever for 47 years, teaching and researching. And one thing I'm certain about is there's no such thing as fear of the unknown. And that's a common thing that people throw out there. I had a lovely lady that was trying to tell me she had fear of the unknown the other day from the UK. And I said, no, stop. Let's stop the delusionary story and let's get real. You cannot have fear of the unknown. You have fear of the content that you're ruminating in your mind at this moment. The moment you have the feeling of fear, your mind has content. And your mind has to be anticipating. and perceiving more losses and gains, more negatives and positives, more pains and pleasures in some sort of subjective biased way about what's going to happen in the future. And this is concocted in your own mind. It has nothing to do with the environment, nothing to do with what's happening. It's concocted in your own mind. And your phobia, your fear, or your philia, which is you're assuming that there's all positives without negatives in the future, both of them are your control. You have control over these because you can ask a set of questions and become aware of what you're unconscious of and balance that equation and dissolve the fear. And once you dissolve the fear, it brings to you the answer to the illusion that you're under in the first place. So if you ask your question, okay, so what's the worst thing that goes on in your mind and you're having a fear? Well, I'm afraid that I won't be able to pay my bill. Okay, if you're not able to pay your bills, you've got a number of choices here. You can communicate to the people you're paying the bills to, and you can say this is what's happening and have dialogue with them and let them be in the loop so they're not left in the dark. You can go out and get off your butt and get online and figure out a way of filling some needs and generate income. You can actually learn and have a higher value on wealth building. And now you know to make sure you have a cash reserve that's 3 to 6 months in the future, which is wise, which people have been telling you about that you haven't listened to. There's many things that you can stack up the benefits of and action steps of. And once you stack up the benefits and action steps sufficient to balance out the assumption that there's all drawbacks, no benefits, that phobia is gone. And you have now strategies and actions to take place that allow you to get a solution. But if you dwell on the problem and say, I don't know what it is, and I'm just in fear, and you run that story and you then go talk to people that are also in that problem, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to dwell and dramatize and accentuate the illusion instead of actually uncover what it's whispering to you intuitively to get you the truth. And the truth will set you free and you realize there was nothing there except your perceptual illusion.
Energy goes where the focus is, right?
Exactly.
So if you focus on the solution will present itself in good time, right? Here it is, perfect time, perfect order. We want everything yesterday.
I had a gentleman who came to my master planning program in the beginning of February in Australia. And he mapped out, and I told him, I said in the program, I said, the greater your life is based on the greater the problems you solve. So the greater the problem, the biggest problem you can solve. So I said, so think about a problem you could solve in the world. Now he had healthcare background, and he thought, what's the biggest problems that I could face? Well, while he was doing the 3-day master planning program, he happened to watch a video that was a TED Talk by Bill Gates, and talked about Bill Gates in 2015 mentioned the potential for this pandemic.
I know it.
And so he watched that while he was in master planning. And he says, I want to come up with a solution in case we have a pandemic.
Wow.
So what happened is he was in master planning there, contemplating that. And most people were thinking about, how they can get this trip and how can they do this? And they were thinking very small. He was thinking on a global scale, what can I do to solve the pandemic that's potentially going to happen?
Right.
And he's a technology background, a health professional. And he came up with an app. And the app is a way of tracing every human being that has been tested by the thing and found to be positive. So they can be located by GPS anywhere in the world and they can do it. And he put that together and he started building that during master planning in February, which is a 3-day program I teach. And he started mapping that out and he finished that right mid-March, right about the 2nd to 3rd week in March. And now the Australian government is going to be using it. And I just sent him over to the Prince of Ethiopia and I sent him to the President of South Africa and the President of Singapore. And I just sent them this link for what this guy has, which will be able to locate people. And all of a sudden he's taken an idea looking for having to solve a problem. And he's potentially made a very lucrative business selling small items, a little app system for a very cheap price to millions and millions of people. And the governments are going to support him. So he's on his way to being probably a centimillionaire in a matter of 5 months, 4 to 5 months of total work.
That's incredible.
Because he cared enough about humanity to think about what's a problem in the world, and he went out to try to find a solution for it, and he figured out it.
Right. Now here it is. He was in healthcare. It sounds like he probably had some good backing for himself and some, financial, no?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Just got on there with a guy that knew how to do an app and started developing an app that would actually help people do this. Because he thought of the problem. He contemplated with foresight in his executive center the potential problem and got with some of his buddies that knew some technology and put this thing together in case this ever happened. This is, when the lockdown occurred about 2 or 3 days after he finished this thing. So he was able to put it right into operation.
Incredible.
So this is because he cared about humanity enough to think, what is the most common potential problem that could cost economically and healthcare, et cetera. And he thought of a solution and ahead of time with technology in advance. That's foresight. So there's no lack of money. There's no lack of support. It's about caring. And you can't get something for nothing. It's about, you have to be willing to do something that makes a difference. And the thing that makes a difference is the thing that inspires you with your unique talents, the competitive advantage you have to the planet by living congruently by what you value most on the planet. When you do, you make the biggest difference on the planet. And that's what we all want to do, whether we're in prison or whether we're leaders of the government. We all want to make a difference. And the truth is we can by being authentic and doing something that's what we love. A young boy who loves video games loves solving the next most difficult video game. When somebody's doing something they love, they're being authentic and inspired by something, they wake up their creative genius and original idea generations, and they end up manifesting potential to make a difference and to get lucratively paid for it. So I'm a firm believer that that's a wiser use of time. And if you ask yourself the highest priority question, highest priority action you can do each day towards that objective, your life changes.
Dr. Demartini, talk about the Executive Center. You are such a scholar, and I am fascinated with the brain. Now, you and I both have something in common. We're both dyslexic. I figured out that I was dyslexic at age 48. I was sitting on my sofa and I had just purchased this novel that was about this big, and I sat down to start it and I slammed the book shut and I said to myself, why did I buy this book, right? I click on Netflix. I kid you not. Dyslexic was spelled backwards. And I ended up watching that documentary. And it was like a day after my mom's birthday. So my mom has been passed for a long time now. And I looked up at the ceiling and I was like, this is how you tell me?
Well, you'd be grateful you got it at 48. That's good.
Right. So
the midlife stage.
Talk to me about, I mean, we could go on and on and on, I'm sure, but since you touched upon the Executive Center, and since I know we have that in common, what insight can you give me?
Well, the Executive Center is typically defined as the medial, which means central line at the midpoint. Medial prefrontal, it means you have the frontal cortex in the front, but it's underneath. So it's prefrontal. In the middle, cortex. It's the most advanced, most kind of the newest, most comprehensive part of the brain. And it's called the Executive Center because it has the ability to do 4 or 5 major things. It is connected with nerve fibers up into V5 and V6, which are visual associative areas in the brain in the occipital region, which allows you to gather a tremendous amount of any experience and associations you've ever had with visual images in your mind. So that's the creative mental visual center. So the Executive Center is responsible for inspired visions, to be able to see solutions to problems and to see a vision and see yourself navigate through and get to the solution. It's also where the most amount of associations are accessed, and you have now the ability to strategically plan. So it's a foresighted, not hindsighted, teleologic, not teleonomic state of the brain, which is basically purposeful solutions to problems and seeing the solutions and strategizing how to get those solutions. It's also the executive function where it goes right into the associative motor cortex with fibers, and it goes and executes spontaneously, literally actions that you see in the strategy that you've seen in your mind. And it also has fibers that go down into the amygdala, the nucleus accumbens and striatum, pallidum, and it goes down there and shuts off impulses, which are fantasies and infatuations that distract you, pleasures, immediate gratifications that distract you, and instincts that are basically pains that are wounds of the subconscious mind that are stored, that anything it reminds you of, and it stops that. With GABA and glutamate, it stops those functions and allows you to stay focused on the strategy that you see in your mind and keep acting. So it's the priority center. And a priori is a philosophical term that Immanuel Kant said is a place where we actually feel called. So this is the center where we feel called theologically into doing something that is purposeful, that is meaningful, that's inspiring, that makes a contribution, that solves the biggest problem. So the executive center occurs whenever we live by highest priority. So that's why you want to ask yourself, what's the highest priority action I can be doing right now with the resources I have that makes the biggest difference, that inspires me? That's exactly why Bill Gates follows that questioning on a daily basis to maximize the executive function in his brain.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. Honestly, I'll be writing that question down and looking at it every day. And what a great story about the individual at the master planning as well. That's an event that I most certainly want to go to when we're traveling again.
Well, the thing is, most people have figured out through trial and error, which is the lowest heuristic way of learning, and it's hindsight, that if we don't fill our day with high priority actions that inspire us, it fills up with low priority distractions that don't. It's not hard to see that. Mm-hmm. When we have a day that we feel that we got the most important things done and we literally got the priorities organized, we feel great, we're more resilient, more adaptable, and no matter what happens, we can handle it. But if we don't get any of the high priority things done and we go, whoa, what a day, no matter what I did, I didn't get anything done, I feel like it's just bombarded by putting fires out. We're more volatile, we're more in our amygdala, we're more into an animal behavior, and we're irrational. Mm-hmm. So if we don't fill our day with high priority actions that inspire us, it's going to fill up with low priority distractions. So entropy, which is a tendency to go from order to disorder, takes over any system that's not organized. And the executive function is designed to organize things and bring order to things, neg-entropy, which is life physics, not death physics. And the moment we fill our day with high priority actions and then live according to those priorities, we maximize our potential as a human being. But that's not limited to a day. That could be a week, a month, a year. It could be a decade. It could be a generation. It could be a life. So if you're not master planning your life and being a master of your own destiny and being captain of your ship and master of your own fate, you're going to be bombarded by opportunists and authorities on the outside, and traditions, conventions, and mothers and fathers and preachers and teachers, and society's norms, which are stagnant, hypocritical moralities many times that are not rational for your own set of values, that impede the potential that you have yearning to express itself. So it's so important to decide as a master what's really priority in your life and take command of it. Because if you don't empower your life, somebody else is going to overpower it. You're going to be a follower living deontologically by duty of other people's expressions and their own rules if you don't take and command and set the rules. And whoever has the most power sets the rules and the values in society. So you can be at the bottom living by duty, or you can be at the top living by design.
Mm-hmm. And now we are talking about design. I think one of the most disempowering statements is, I don't know. I don't know what to do, right? A lot of coaching clients, they're in a transition. They just lost their job. They're unhappy. I would have to say 90% of the workforce out there is unhappy. And now with the playing field as it is right now, you do have the ability to do the inner work, get quiet, be creative, and stop that chatter of, I don't know. I don't know what to do. So what would you say, with regards to that, Dr. Demartini?
Well, it's not the world. We're not a victim of our history. We can be a master of our destiny. It's not the world on the outside that dictates it. Yeah. It's not a zeitgeist. In psychology, there's a victim model out there that we're a byproduct of our society. And, if the way we were raised, the way this is happening, and we're the byproduct of that. I've never seen that to be true. That's not the factor. I think that's a scapegoat. What happens to you is not what matters, is how you perceive it. And you always have the ability to change that perception. And the Breakthrough Experience, the program I've been doing 1,094 times, I've taken people who've been through just about every imaginable thing that they've gone through.
I bet.
I mean, unbelievable stuff that you would think there's no way you could find blessings in that or upsides to that.
Right.
There's not one thing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. So knowing how to ask the right questions, holding people accountable to not run their racket and story to their little therapist, but to actually go and get accountable and find out how there's upsides to what you think are downsides and downsides to what you think are upsides, and bring your mind back into equanimity and balance. You liberate yourself from the bondage of all those emotions that are feedback mechanisms to guide you to authenticity that you have misinterpreted because you've been hoodwinkled into thinking you're supposed to be one-sided and you're supposed to get rid of half of yourself. That's never going to be empowering to you. So I teach people the set of questions that allow them to realize that no matter what's been in their life, no matter what they've been through, no matter what they experience, it's on the way, not in the way. And when they do, they're infueled by power in their life instead of frictioned and frustrated and basically, frightened by their existence.
Mm-hmm. And I can speak from personal experience now, right? Because having that online class with you, one of the things we discussed was grief, right? And, losing my mom at age 18 unexpectedly, quite honestly, there was still a lot of grief there. And here it is. You brought to me what the benefit has been. I most certainly would not be the person I am today if that hadn't happened.
Exactly.
Right. And I thank her for it.
There's only two sources of grief: the perception of loss of that which we seek, or the perception of gain of that which we try to avoid. Mm-hmm. That's it. There is no other forms. I've been doing this a long time. Since 1984, I've been taking 3,560 something clients through this grief process I developed. Now, whenever there's a perception of loss of that which we seek, we have grief. So that means if we're hungry and we want food and it's now taken away from us, we have grief. But if we give us food, we get relief. So relief is the perception of gain of that which you seek. And grief is also the perception of gain of that which you don't want, what you're trying to avoid. So a predator coming to eat you is grief. But the predator leaving you and losing that which you're trying to avoid is relief. So as long as we label things positively or negatively, and we don't see both sides to it, we see yin without yang or yang without yin and not a bit of yin and yang and a bit of yang and yin, you might say. As long as we have a highly polarized perception, we're going to live with extreme distresses, because stress is the inability to adapt to changing environments, and changing environments are constant. And they're constantly losing that which we're seeking and trying to gain that which we don't. It's constantly happening. So if we have a very neutral mind, an objective mind, a mind of equanimity, we completely adapt. We don't have the fear of loss or gain of anything. But the second we polarize and make something bad or something good, we fear its gain or we fear its loss. And we create that. And we can change. I don't care what you've been through. I can take anything you think is positive or negative and spin it and find the other side. Mm-hmm. This is what Plato did in his dialogues. When he'd have a dialogue with another philosopher, and the philosopher would say something, or a merchant he would meet on the street would say something, and this is good. And Plato had said, "Oh, you're so wise and so right. But what about this?" Like Columbo with his little cigar. Right. But what about this in this situation? And then he'd take this merchant, this other philosopher, and he'd show him, point out the downsides to what he thought was good. And then he'd convince the guy that they were downsides. And the second he did it, he goes, "Well, you were so right. I was wrong. It's actually not so good after all. It's all down." And then he'd turn around and flip it back over to the good side, and then back and forth, and twist the mind of this person until they go, "Well, I don't know whether it's good or bad." He said, "It's neither. It's simply an event. And you can make a heaven or a hell out of it. Right. You can make a mountain out of a molehill or a molehill out of a mountain based on your perceptions. And we have the capacity with our objective center of our brain to ask questions, to be able to see both sides of an event and make it neither good nor evil, neither positive nor negative. And when it's completely neutral, it has no perception of gain and loss associated with it. And now we're present. And that's right. What liberates. In the breakthrough experience, I teach people a science of how to do that. So they're not sit there, run their lives with all this moral constraints that they're trapped by, that are not even theirs, that have been parroted, that they're parroting from some unknown sources that they were designed to control people of the masses with opium in order to have control over people because they couldn't control themselves.
Wow. Everyone, this is why I'm telling you, the breakthrough experience, anything that Dr. Demartini has to share is just rich in substance. I mean, when we were sitting on that online course and I kind of like held up my hand, right? There's so much information that you put out there that is really like, it takes a while to absorb it because it is dense, right? You're such a scholar. So I want to see what else you would like to talk about. Is there anything else that we should hit upon right now? Because
Well,
I'm just,
I think
I'm just in awe of this
I,
conversation.
I think that people right now, there's a lot of comedy coming out of the tragedy, as you see. The
Mhm.
source of comedy is always tragedy. And I mean, I saw some really funny stuff that's been thrown at me. People sending me. I'm sure you're getting the same thing. Really hilarious stuff that's coming out. In South Africa, they had a complete lockdown, right, because of the coronavirus.
Right.
They're trying to save lives, which is understandable. But what's happening is that they're not allowed to leave their home.
Wow.
And if they're in a car to go to get essentials, they can only have one person in the car or one in the front and back seat. They have to be 4 feet apart. It's very, very almost like militarized right now.
Right.
So as a result, that repression causes all kind of creative expressions. So all of a sudden online, the guy figures out how to solve this problem, you know, how to get what he wants. So he puts himself in, he has some plastic bags, these big black plastic bags, you know, the big grocery, not grocery, but garbage bags. And he gets inside of them. He opens up a hole for his foot and his other foot. And he puts two little eyes and a little mouth open. And he get his buddy to tie it at the top so he can walk in this thing. And he and his buddy do this to each other. And then they go outside. And if they're walking and there's nobody around that looks like a policeman or anything that's doing it, they can literally walk on the sidewalk on the way to the grocery store to get something. And they're protected because they're in a plastic bag. But at the same time, if a police goes by, they immediately sit and act like a piece of trash. So, you know, people are coming up with creative solutions. And then another one, you know, because people are around their kids right now,
Right.
you know, it's a little bit overwhelming sometimes when you're not used to being here with your kids 24 hours a day. It's a little bit overwhelming.
Right.
So there's a guy that figured out how to put together a little wall that looks like the scenery behind it. So when his kids come running, daddy, 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 he sticks up this little wall and they can't see him. He's sitting on the couch, but he just holds it up and then they go, where's daddy? And they go around the other room. So and then there's another guy that was basically decided he was going to play prankster because, you know, when you're locked up in a house, you're going to come up with creative, funny things.
Right.
He's going to play prankster. So he dresses up completely in reverse. So he puts his hood on backwards so his face is on the back, right? And the front is actually his backside. So he puts his clothes, everything is in reverse. So he goes in the living room, the kitchen over, and his wife walks by. And then when she does, she sees him and he's standing like this, but it's actually his front, not his back. But his wife all of a sudden slaps him on the butt and actually hits him right in the front.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So the comical things that are happening right now that are online are quite numerous. And I think that's great. I think that we are wise to spin whatever's happening into our other side so we can see both sides. Because somewhere down the line, we're going to look at this period in our existence as one of the funniest and most inspiring and most creative periods. And yes, there's going to be some passing, but there's also going to be a lot of births. And there's already right now a tremendous amount of births going on, and abortion rates are dropping, and they're dropping at the same rate as they're actually dying. So we're actually seeing a transformation. The master lives in a world of transformation. The masses live in the illusions of gain and loss. So you want to be a master, you live in your executive center, and you return to the executive center when you've been perturbed. But if you're in the masses, you just stay running your story and become the victim of history. So it's up to you. It's a total freedom. We have the freedom to listen to our heart and soul, you might say, the state of unconditional love, and have the wisdom of our heart, or we have the capacity to be fooled by our senses. And this is an old Stoic insight, and it still has usefulness today, even practical psychology.
Dr. Demartini, thank you so much for carving out the time to talk with me and to talk to whomever is going to watch this. I want to rattle off a little bit of information since I know it. I've been listening to you for over 10 years now. DrDemartini.com. You have a Facebook page that people can find you. There's the breakthrough experience that I highly recommend. And of course, I'll meet you in person because I'll be going through that again. There's the master planning class that's 3 days long, I believe. And then there's also the prophecy, which is something that I'll hit as well. There's the Dr. Demartini training method that people can go through. All they have to do is go to your website and they can find all the information. So I'm going to ask you to stay on the call, Dr. Demartini, and then I'm just going to stop the recording here. So everyone that's listening, thank you so much for joining us. This is Patty D, your coach and job strategist. I'm wishing you all the best, lots of love, and stay close. Bing.